My daughter-in-law invited me on a sunset cruise, poured my wine to the brim, and quietly asked about my life insurance. She had no idea the old phone in my coat pocket was quietly recording every question she asked about what would happen if I had an accident at sea. I'm writing this under the title, My Daughter-in-Law Took Me on a Sunset Cruise, then asked about my life insurance. If this were Reddit, I'd probably post it as, Am I the asshole for turning my son and daughter-in-law over to the insurance investigators and cutting them out of my will after that sunset cruise? I'm 68 years old. I'm not good with technology. My neighbor's granddaughter had to show me how to type, how to click, how to post. But there's one thing I do understand. When your own child starts seeing you as a number in a policy, as money waiting to be paid out, you either close your eyes and pretend you didn't notice, or you protect yourself, even if the price is your family breaking apart. That night, the air over the Oregon coast was colder than usual. The sunset was so beautiful anyone would have sighed over it. Orange, purple, and pink smeared across the water, a little bite in the wind. My daughter-in-law, Kara, said, Mom Helen deserves a movie night like this just for her, just family, out on the water. She smiled so brightly, the kind of smile that, if you only saw it in photos, you'd say, Wow, your daughter-in-law is so sweet, she treats you like a queen. She poured me a glass of white wine, full to the brim, a lot more than she poured for herself and for my son, Daniel. I took a sip and felt the wine hit harder than usual. My throat warmed fast, my face flushed, my hands trembled just a bit. I've never been able to handle much alcohol, so normally I just take a couple polite sips. But that night, Kara kept raising her glass, clinking, urging me. Just relax, Mom. Tonight you don't have to worry about anything. It's just the ocean, the sunset, and us here with you. It sounded lovely, so lovely that, if I'd slipped off that boat and into the water, the story would have written itself. An old woman who passed away peacefully at sea after a beautiful evening with her family. When the boat got farther from shore, Kara told me to go inside the cabin and grab another jacket so I wouldn't get cold. I got up, a little wobbly from the wine, one hand on the seat, the other holding my phone. I must have hit something by accident. I heard a tiny click and the screen went dark. I shoved the phone into my coat pocket and shuffled into the cabin. While I was digging around for my jacket, I heard Kara's footsteps behind me, and then the little door to the wheelhouse open. Her voice dropped to a tone I'd never heard her use with me. I couldn't see her face. I just heard her voice, stretched a little thin by the sea wind. So, just to be clear, if something happened out here, like some kind of accident at sea, the policy still pays out, right? My heart clenched. I froze with my hand still on the hanger. My head was fuzzy from the wine, but my ears were sharp. I heard every word. Pays out. Accident at sea. I couldn't make out what the person on the other end said, just a few muffled replies. Then I heard Kara give this little laugh, a kind of laugh I'd never heard her use with me. Well, she's almost 70, and she's not that steady on her feet. These things happen. I leaned back against the cabin wall. Each word felt like it hit me square in the chest. She was me. Me, the woman she calls Mama H in front of her friends, the one she hugs in pictures and posts on social media with captions like, So blessed to have this queen in my life. And now, with that same mouth, she was talking about me to someone at the insurance company like I was just a potential drowning. I stood there for a few minutes until my heart stopped pounding. Then I rustled my jacket on purpose and coughed softly to let her know I was around. Kara shut the little door and turned back to me, her face bright again like there had never been a phone call at all. Did you find your jacket, Mom? It's chilly out there. Put it on so I don't worry about you. I nodded, keeping my eyes down. I didn't dare look into her eyes too long. I was afraid if I did, she'd see that I'd heard everything. The rest of the evening, I sat there with my hands knotted in my lap, trying to hide how badly they were shaking under the sound of the waves and the engine. Kara kept smiling, kept taking pictures, kept saying all the standard family time lines. Daniel, my son, was quieter than usual. He stared out at the horizon, avoiding my eyes. I had no idea how much he knew. I just knew there was a cold distance between me and the boy I'd carried and raised. We got back to the dock after dark. Kara drove. Daniel sat in the front. I was in the back seat clutching my purse. Every time the car bounced over a pothole, I flinched. In my head, I kept circling the same questions. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe she was joking. Maybe. But there was one thing that wasn't a maybe. That icy feeling that ran down my spine when I heard someone treat my death like a financial scenario. That night at home, I told them I was tired and went to bed early. Behind my bedroom door, I sat on the edge of the bed and dug my phone out of my purse to call Linda, an old friend of mine who works in insurance. When I unlocked the screen, I froze. The voice recorder app was still running. I hit stop. One single file showed up over an hour long, exactly the length of that sunset cruise. My hands were shaking, but I pressed play. Kara's voice poured into my bedroom, clear as day. The waves, the hum of the motor, her questions. It wasn't just my memory anymore. Something people could shrug off as, "You're confused," or "You're being too sensitive." It was right there in the phone as sound. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed listening to my own life being measured and priced and questions about a policy, an accident, and old age over and over. Each time I listened, my throat tightened a little more. I wasn't choking because I was afraid of dying. At my age, that doesn't feel so far off. I was choking because I understood something ugly. If I really had slipped off that boat, if I hadn't clumsily hit that little button on my phone, the whole world would have believed it was a sad but normal accident. A few days later, Daniel and Kara would tell people I destroyed their lives over a misunderstanding, over a recording that proves nothing. They'd call me cruel, say I didn't love my son, say I dragged the police and the insurance company into family matters. That's why I'm sitting here now, writing and rewriting this, telling it from the beginning, asking myself, am I really the bad one for protecting myself, for trusting that recording and the cold hands of the law, instead of blindly trusting my own son and daughter-in-law? I thought that the next morning I'd wake up and laugh at myself for being paranoid, chalk it up to being old and overthinking. But the America outside my window looked the same as always. Only the feeling in my chest was different. I made a pot of coffee and stood at the kitchen window, looking out over the gray bay. The tide had gone out, leaving wet streaks of sand. Seagulls waddled around looking for something to eat. The house was strangely quiet. When my husband was alive, I'd hear him every morning, fussing around by the dock, checking the ropes, wiping down our old little fishing boat. Now it's just me and the sound of the kettle. My phone was on the table. The recording icon was just a tiny line on the screen, but it felt like a stone. I poured coffee with a trembling hand and scrolled through my contacts until I found Linda Church Insurance. She picked up after a few rings. "Hello? Linda, it's me, Helen," I said. My voice sounded far away, even to me. "Helen? Hey there. Everything okay?" "No, not really," I swallowed. I think I need to talk to you about insurance and about Daniel and his wife." Linda went quiet for a moment, then her voice softened. "Can you swing by my office this morning?" she asked. "I'm working today." "I'll come," I said. "But before I get there, I need to ask you something. If someone called the insurance company and asked about payouts for an accident at sea, would that be recorded?" Linda sighed. "Most calls are logged," she said. "Not every call is taped, but there'll at least be notes. Time, date, phone number. Just bring me what you have. We'll take a look. Linda's office is in a faded brick strip mall near the grocery store. The sign out front says, Coastal Life and Home Insurance, by appointment only. I pushed the door open. The little bell chimed overhead. Linda stepped out from behind a partition, the same friendly face I see at church on Sundays, with those familiar lines at the corners of her eyes. "Helen," she said, coming over to give me a quick hug. "You look exhausted." "I didn't sleep," I admitted. We sat at a small table. She poured me a glass of water and slid it over. "Okay," she said gently, but more serious than I'd heard her before. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Daniel wanting to help with my paperwork, how Kara suggested switching everything to email, about the sunset cruise, the heavy wine, the jacket in the cabin, the phone call, the words accident at sea, and the recording. Linda's face grew tighter as she listened. When I put my phone on the table and let her hear the audio, her hand stopped halfway through writing. Kara's voice came through clear. "If something happened out here, accident at sea, she's almost 70. When it ended, Linda stayed quiet for a long time. She didn't rush to tell me I was overreacting. She didn't say I was being dramatic. That honestly hurt and comforted me at the same time. "Give me a day or two," she said finally. "I'll check our system and see if anything's been happening with your policy. I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best. Just don't say anything to Daniel or Kara yet. Please?" I nodded, my throat thick. "Linda?" I asked softly before I stood up. If what I'm thinking is true, how bad is it?" She met my eyes. "Helen, if someone changed your policy so they get the money when you die, then called asking about what happens if you drown, that's not just paperwork. That's fraud. And if they were planning more than that, the law calls that conspiracy." I stepped outside into the cold coastal air. The town I've known all my life suddenly felt unfamiliar. I walked home slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. 2 days later, Linda called again. "Helen, can you come back in today?" she asked. Her voice had that metal edge this time. I sat across from her at the same table. This time she slid a small stack of papers toward me. "I asked the policy team to pull your recent activity," she said. "These are the changes to your life insurance over the last 6 months. My eyes moved down the printed lines. Beneficiary change request, submitted online. Primary beneficiary, Daniel Carter, son. Contingent beneficiary, Kara Carter, spouse of Daniel. Contact email updated to Helen Carter Family at, an email I've never used. Primary phone number, X O, A, A, DC, Nesday, A, I, Nes, T, Tes, Ekas, Is, Get, Ise, A, Dia, A, Yiti, A, Yes, A, A, Gay, Das, Kekus, Et, Kesta, S, Et, At, Dead, Icy, A, Asiki, Et, A, Taike, White, A, 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 C, S, Et, Et, This, that, that, Five, L, Da, Das, Da, 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 A, 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 Else, And here, she said, is the log of a call from Kara's number 2 months ago. The rep's note says, caller inquired about coverage in case of accidental drowning, boating accident, explained standard conditions and exclusions. My hands went cold. I never asked to change my beneficiary, I whispered. I thought I was just signing something to update my address. I thought, I know, Linda said quietly. That's the problem. Changes like this don't just appear. Someone made them. They used an email they control, and that question about drowning? That's not nothing, Helen. What do I do? I whispered. I've already reached out to a lawyer we work with on elder financial abuse cases, she said. His name is Miller. If you're willing, I'd like you to meet with him so he can look at all of this. You don't have to sign anything yet. But Helen, I really think you need a lawyer. I sat there listening to the clock tick on the wall. I don't want to drag my own kid into court, I said at last. But I also don't want to end up at the bottom of the bay because of anybody, even my daughter-in-law. Linda nodded. Nobody wants it to go this far, but you have a right to be safe. And the law exists for moments exactly like this, when your own family isn't doing right by you. Miller looked to be in his early 60s, gray hair at the temples, thin metal glasses. His office was up on the second floor of an old building, smelling like paper and coffee. On the wall were pictures of him with older people holding little thank you signs. He shook my hand, firm and warm. Mrs. Carter, I've reviewed the documents Linda sent, he said, but I'd like to hear it from you, in your own words. Pretend I'm a stranger. So I told it all again. Third time. Each time I tell it, the details get sharper. The way Daniel stared at the horizon that night. The way Kara's wine glass stayed shallow while mine stayed full. The way she talked about my death, like she was asking about the weather. Miller listened, occasionally jotting notes. When you signed those update forms, he asked, did anyone explain exactly what they were? No, I said. Daniel told me they were just updating my email and mailing address. Kara stood next to him smiling, telling me, just sign, Mom. We've read everything. Do you have copies of what you signed? He asked. I think there might be copies in the filing cabinet in my bedroom, I said. My husband used to photocopy anything he signed. After he died, I've been less organized. We'll find them, Miller said. For now, I'll be blunt. What you've described, combined with your policy logs and that recording, looks serious. This isn't just kids messing with paperwork. I swallowed. You mean? I mean that if someone changes your beneficiary to themselves, calls asking what happens if you die in a particular way, and then takes you out on a boat with a lot of wine. He paused. The law doesn't see that as a coincidence anymore. It sees a pattern of attempted insurance fraud. Even if they never got to finish the plan, the preparation and motive still matter. So, my son, I couldn't finish the sentence. I wasn't on that boat, he said. I can't say exactly what Daniel knew, but he signed the forms he's listed as the primary beneficiary. In a lot of cases, that's enough for the courts to call someone an accomplice, whether they understood every detail or not. I'm not telling you this to make you hate him. I'm telling you so you know how serious this is and why ignoring it would be dangerous for you and for other seniors if they try this again. The room felt smaller. I could hear the thud of my pulse in my ears. So, what are my choices? I asked. Miller laid them out, calm and clear, like he'd done it 100 times. Option 1. You pretend you don't know. You hope they stop. With everything we've seen, I think that's very risky. Option 2. You confront them yourself. The risk there is they might turn it around. Say you're confused, mentally declining, and try to get a doctor to declare you incompetent so they can get legal guardianship. I shivered. I've read enough stories of older people losing control of their lives over one doctor's note. Option 3, he continued. You let the people whose job it is handle it. Me, the insurance company, and if necessary, law enforcement. You give us the truth, the recording, documents, your story. We ask the insurance company to open a fraud investigation that will definitely cause trouble for Daniel and Kara. Maybe big trouble, but it will also protect you and maybe others. I stared at my hands, all wrinkled and veiny, the same hands that spoon-fed Daniel when he was a baby. Now I had to decide whether to attach his name to a fraud file. I don't want my son going to prison, I said quietly. I understand, he said. Whether charges are filed and what sentence they ask for is up to the DA and the court. Your job right now isn't to decide punishment. It's to tell the truth and protect yourself. We'll start with one step, notifying the insurance company of suspected fraud and sending the recording. You won't sign anything you don't understand. I'll walk you through every word. Is that okay? I took a deep breath. It felt like someone had put another stone on my back, but at least this one was mine to choose. Okay, I said, let's do it. Just slowly. My heart needs time to catch up. Miller smiled faintly. We'll go slow, but we'll go. A week later, a thick envelope showed up in my mailbox. The insurance company's logo sat in the corner. My hands were cold before I even opened it. Inside was a letter. My life insurance policy had been moved to their special investigations unit. All changes and payouts were frozen, and they'd be in touch to clarify some irregularities. The language was polite and corporate, but every sentence smelled like urgency. Miller called to say they wanted to schedule a policy review meeting at their main office, inviting me, Daniel, and Kara. He told me I should agree and that he'd go with me. That's when everything will be laid out on the table, he said. Do they know it's an investigation? I asked. They'll think it's just a review, he said. Whether it becomes something more depends partly on how they act. That evening, Daniel called. He sounded more upbeat than I'd heard in a long time. Hey, Mom, he said. The insurance company called. Said they want us all to come in and go over your policy. Some kind of benefits review. Might be something extra for you. I asked if Kara and I could sit in, help ask the tough questions for you. My heart clenched at his tone. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice steady. I got the letter too. I'll go. My lawyer will too. Your lawyer? Daniel repeated. like he'd been slapped. "Why do you need a lawyer, Mom? Don't you trust us?" I paused. Some words, once they're out, you can't take back. "Daniel," I said slowly, "I think anyone signing their name on things should have someone there to protect them. You have your wife. I have Mr. Miller. That's all." He was quiet for a few seconds, then hung up faster than usual. The morning of the meeting was overcast. The insurance office was in a bigger town about 40 minutes away. Miller picked me up in his old sedan. "You ready?" he asked as he opened the passenger door. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but if I wait until I'm ready, I'll probably die of old age first." He let out a small laugh. "Then let's go, McCoy." We were about 10 minutes early. The conference room was small, a wooden table with chairs on each side. A middle-aged woman introduced herself as the representative, and a younger man as the compliance officer. Miller gave me a little look. This was the internal investigator. Daniel and Kara came in a bit late. Kara wore a dark blue dress, hair neatly pulled back, like she was about to go on an interview or film a video. She walked over and gave my shoulders a quick hug, but she was stiff as a board. "Mom," she said, "I'm so glad you came. We're going to get everything clarified and make things even better for you." Daniel stood next to her, nodding, eyes flicking over Miller with a frown. Once everyone sat, the rep opened a file. "First, thank you all for coming," she said. "We just want to make sure Mrs. Carter's policy still reflects her wishes and that everyone understands the benefits and responsibilities. I'll go over a few changes made in the past 6 months." She read, "Updated email, updated phone, updated beneficiaries." After each item, she turned to me. "Mrs. Carter, do you confirm that you requested this change?" she asked. I looked her straight in the eye. "No," I said. "I did not ask to change my beneficiary. I thought I was signing to update my mailing address. I never used that email. I've never seen it." The air shifted. Kara jumped in. "She just doesn't remember. She doesn't really get emails, so we—" The compliance officer raised a hand slightly, and Kara stopped. "We have system logs," he said. "They show that the changes were made from an IP address in Portland at a time when our records say Mrs. Carter was in the hospital after a fall. Based on the medical releases we have, the verification text went to this phone number." He read out Kara's number. Kara gave a strained smile. "Right, but that's because we were helping her," she said, her voice starting to wobble. "She always asks us to help with forms. She doesn't understand any of this stuff." Miller leaned forward. "Helping read forms is one thing," he said calmly. "Changing the beneficiary so you two get the payout is something else." Daniel slammed his palm on the table. "You make it sound like we—" The compliance officer cut him off by setting a small recorder on the table. "Before we go any further," he said, "we'd like to play an audio file Mrs. Carter's attorney provided. It's directly related to why we called this meeting." My heart thudded. Kara stared at the device, smiling a frozen little smile. A small beep, then the sound of waves, the motor, and then Kara's voice. "So, just to be clear, if something happened out here, like some kind of accident at sea, the policy still pays out, right?" The room went dead silent. I listened to that little laugh again, colder than the wind that night. "Well, she's almost 70, and she's not that steady on her feet. These things happen." The investigator turned the recorder off. No one moved. "That was—" Kara started, her voice barely coming out. "That was a joke. We were just talking hypothetically. Everybody jokes like that." Dark humor. "I've worked with elder financial abuse cases for over 20 years, Miller said, leaning back, eyes on her. "I've heard a lot of dark humor. It tends to pop up right alongside policy changes and calls asking about payouts for drowning." Daniel turned to his wife, then to me. For the first time in a long time, he actually looked at me. "Mom," he said. his voice cracking. You secretly recorded us? I gave a bitter little smile. I'm an old woman, Daniel, I said. I barely know how to use this thing. I didn't even know I'd hit record. Maybe God decided to hit that button for me. Ya me estos mo. The compliance officer spoke up again, his tone still professional, but noticeably firmer. We haven't made a final determination yet, he said. But with the system logs, this recording, and the call notes we have from Ms. Kara's number, we are obligated to refer this to our fraud investigation unit. Depending on their findings, this may also be forwarded to law enforcement. Your precise roles will be carefully reviewed. Kara shot to her feet, chair screeching. This is ridiculous, she snapped. We were just trying to take care of her. She lives alone in this old house. She could fall or set something on fire. We just asked questions, so... If she died naturally in her house, Miller cut in, voice still gentle, you'd still inherit as her son and daughter-in-law. You just wouldn't get a big lump sum from the policy. But if she dies in a tragic accident at sea after drinking on a boat you rented, that fits an insurance script a lot better, doesn't it? Daniel's face turned red. You don't get to talk about my wife like that, he shouted. Then explain this, the investigator said, unfazed. I hope the email from Ms. Kara's account, asking specifically about accidental drowning coverage, is also just dark humor. Kara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I saw raw panic flicker across her face. In that moment, I realized I wasn't looking at the woman who once sat next to me slicing Thanksgiving pie. I was looking at someone terrified because her plan had gone sideways. Someone more worried about herself than about the fact her mother-in-law knew she'd been discussing her death. The meeting wrapped up with forms, signatures, and promises that they'd be in touch with my attorney regarding next steps. Daniel and Kara left first. I sat a little longer. My legs were tired. On the way out to the parking lot, I saw them huddled by their car. Kara was talking fast, almost hissing. Daniel shook his head, pale. When they noticed me, Kara turned, eyes blazing. "What did you do, Helen?" she said, dropping the mom. Her voice was low but sharp. "You just destroyed this family over a meaningless recording." I stopped, still buttoning my coat. "Meaningless?" I asked, hoarse. If I had gone overboard that night, that recording would be the only thing telling the truth about my death. Still meaningless? Kara bit her lip, eyes wet, not with sadness, but anger. "You could have just talked to us," Daniel said, sounding more pleading than angry now. "You didn't have to drag the insurance company, lawyers, and cops into it." I looked at my son for a long time. "If I had just talked to you," I said slowly, "do you really think you would have fixed this yourselves? Or would you have told people I was losing it and dragged me to some doctor to say I'm not competent to sign anything anymore?" He didn't answer. They turned and got into the car. The door slammed like a line being drawn in concrete. The following months were a blur of phone calls, letters, and paperwork. The insurance company officially handed the case over to their fraud unit. Then the police contacted Miller, wanting my statement. They were polite and matter-of-fact. In their eyes, I saw something I'd only seen on TV before, the look they give a witness. They asked me everything again, from the first time Daniel and Kara offered to help with my finances, to the cruise, the wine, the phone call, the system logs, all of it. I answered, trying not to cry. I wasn't ashamed. I was just tired. Daniel and Kara were called in too. I wasn't there, but Miller told me afterward. Kara initially denied everything, claimed the recording was edited. Once she saw the logs, the emails, and heard the call center rep's testimony, she shifted to the "we were just thinking ahead" story. "And Daniel?" I asked. "He says he trusted his wife," Miller replied. Says he thought they were just updating things for you, but his signature is at the bottom of those forms. Signatures don't lie. I don't want him to go to prison, I repeated, like a broken record. I know, Miller said. Whether he's charged and with what is up to the DA. I can tell them you're not out for blood, just for safety. The rest is out of our hands. Meanwhile, there was another quiet war going on. The will. Here's what you own, Miller said, ticking it off. The house by the bay, the dock, some savings, and this life insurance that's now frozen. Under your old will, Daniel is your main heir. That means no matter how this case turns out, if you pass, he still gets almost everything. Is that what you still want? I stared at the map of the town on his wall, the little streets, the curve of the bay, the red dot representing my house. When my husband and I made that will, we named Daniel because we trusted him. I said, we thought he was the one who knew how to handle business. And his sister was more fragile, but now, I sighed, I don't trust him enough to hand him my whole life anymore. You don't have to cut everyone off, Miller said. You have grandkids. You can set up education funds for them, managed by a third party, so the money never passes through Daniel or Kara's hands, and you can leave the bulk of your estate to something you actually believe in. Like what? I asked. He slid a brochure across the desk. Elder Financial Abuse Support Fund, State of Oregon. This fund helps seniors who've been financially abused, pays for lawyers, housing, that kind of thing, he explained. You've been there. You know that feeling. You could leave a portion, or even most, of your estate to this fund, with the condition that you can live in your house until you die. I held the pamphlet. The smiling older faces on it felt almost unreal to me. It makes sense, I said slowly. If I have to go through this, maybe something good can come of it for someone else. My grandkids, they didn't do anything wrong. So we wrote a new will. The house, dock, and most of my remaining money would go to the Elder Abuse Fund with a life estate so I could stay there as long as I live. Each grandchild would get a small education fund, managed by the bank, payable only for schooling. Daniel and Kara would be removed as heirs. When I signed it, my hand shook, not from age, but from knowing exactly what I was doing. Closing the door on my only child inheriting anything from me. But sometimes, to survive, you can't keep your front door open for both the breeze and the burglars. The case eventually went to court. It wasn't a big, dramatic trial like in the movies, but there was a jury, a prosecutor, and a defense attorney. I sat in the back row, clutching an old handkerchief. When the prosecutor played the recording again, the room went quiet. Kara sat at the defense table, thinner, lips pressed together. Daniel sat in the gallery, not a formal defendant, but far from innocent. The defense tried hard to paint her as a well-meaning but clumsy daughter-in-law, full of gallows humor, just planning ahead for a fragile elder. But the logs, the emails, the suspicious transfers out of the joint account, they all stacked up against that story. In the end, the jury found Kara guilty of attempted insurance fraud. The sentence wasn't a decades-long prison term, but it wasn't nothing. Probation, mandatory classes on elder abuse, fines, and most importantly, a permanent mark on her record. In industries dealing with money and trust, that mark is a career death sentence. Daniel, after a lot of legal wrangling, was treated as someone who assisted without full understanding. He dodged criminal charges but had to pay back some money and accept that his name was tainted inside the insurance company's files. No school district wanted to hire a man who'd been tied up in a case involving fraud against his own mother. Whatever chance he had of going back to teaching was gone. He picked up warehouse work, hard, low-paying, and unforgiving. After the verdict, Daniel found me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Kara walked ahead of him, refusing to look at me. "Are you happy now?" he asked, eyes red. My wife's got a record and no job. I can't get a decent job. We're in debt. Our whole life is ruined. Did you protect anyone today? I looked at the child I'd raised, now a man who felt like a stranger. Daniel, I said quietly. I didn't control the judge or the jury or the insurance company. I only gave them the truth. You and Kara put yourselves here. I just wanted to take care of you, he said, voice breaking, still trying to hang on to that story. I thought, if something happened, at least we could pay off debts, take care of our kids. I closed my eyes for a second. There isn't a terrible thing in this world that can't be sugar-coated with the phrase, for the family. If you wanted to take care of me, I said, you could have come fix my loose porch step. You could have visited more, called to ask if I'd eaten, not signed up to collect if I died. Suddenly, you know what I'd do if I drowned out there, Daniel? I'd haunt you for the rest of your life. He let out a dry, humorless laugh and shook his head. Then he turned and walked away. 1 year went by, then 2. The house by the bay stayed the same, siding a little more weathered, flower pots still needing water, seagulls still screaming every morning. I started attending a small group run by that elder abuse fund. Once a month, we met in a church hall, drank coffee, and shared stories. One woman's grandson drained her ATM card, just borrowing. Another woman's daughter sold her car and forgot the "I'll buy you a new one" part. When it was my turn, I talked about the golden light on the water, the wine, the phone call, the logs, and that recorder. Some people shook their heads, some dabbed their eyes, a few got angry on my behalf. After the meeting, an older woman shuffled over and gripped my hand. I wish I'd been as brave as you, she said. I caught my son using my name to take out loans, but I was scared. Scared he'd be mad. Scared the neighbors would say I dragged my own kid into court. Now I've got no money and no son. I hugged her, and it felt like hugging my own future that I'd just barely avoided. I also got hand-drawn cards from my grandkids. On one of them was a crooked sun and a wobbly ocean. Dear Grandma Helen, the oldest wrote, we miss you. Thank you for our school money. Mom says she doesn't want us to see you, but Dad says when we are older we can decide. We love you. I set the card on the mantel next to my husband's photo. He looked down at me with that calm little smile of his. Miller later told me that Daniel and Kara divorced after the case. Finances, shame, and broken trust, finally snapping what was left. Now and then, Daniel sends me short emails. Hope you're okay. Kids are doing fine. I'm working in a warehouse now. I reply with equally short messages. No accusations, no reopening old wounds. There's a wide river between us now, and I don't know if we'll ever build a bridge across it. On stormy nights, when the wind howls off the bay, I sometimes jolt awake hearing Kara's voice in my head. Accident at sea. She's almost 70. I wonder, if I hadn't accidentally hit that record button, would I still be here? Or would people be telling a story about poor Helen, the clumsy old lady who slipped off a boat? Would Daniel be delivering a tearful eulogy, then quietly checking the payout in his email inbox? Whenever that thought starts circling, I open the recorder app and look at that old file. I've already backed it up, printed transcripts, handed it to Miller, to the insurance company, to the police. Now it's just a relic, proof that sometimes God uses the clumsy fingers of old women to save their own lives. So here I am, tapping out this story for the internet, for all the people over 50 and 60 who scroll silently through posts like this in the dark. I know some will say I'm cruel, that I wrecked my son's and daughter-in-law's future. Others will say I did the right thing and protected myself. But between those opinions, there's only one question that keeps me awake at night. Am I the asshole for taking that recording and those documents to the insurance company, the lawyer, and the police, knowing it could destroy my son's future just because I refused to let my death become a convenient accident at sea for their policy? If this were r/AITA, you'd vote NTAYTAESH or something in between. Me, at my age, I just hope for this, that if anyone reading this ever hears someone talk about their death, like a financial scenario, they'll trust that sick feeling in their gut and go look for the truth, even if that truth shatters the pretty picture they painted of family. Because sometimes choosing the law over silence isn't betraying your family. It's the last way you have left to protect the little bit of yourself that's still yours. And maybe, just maybe, to protect other old folks you'll never meet.